What if, and just bear with me here, what if the reason you are completely exhausted right now has absolutely nothing to do with how much sleep you got last night?
Right. Or, how many calories you've burned today.
Exactly. What if energy, as we know it, this invisible battery we are constantly trying to recharge, this tank we think we are draining, is just a complete fundamental myth?
I mean, it is basically the most pervasive myth in modern wellness today. And it's built on a metaphor that is actually, actively working against our biology.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're going to completely revolutionize how you think about your own vitality, because we throw around these phrases constantly, right? Like you hear it all the time.
Oh, yeah. I've got good vibes today, or I'm feeling so drained.
Yeah, I need to recharge my social battery. We use these words, but when you stop and actually think about it, what are we pointing at? Like, what is this invisible fluid we're supposedly running out of?
And that's exactly the problem right there.
Yeah.
We're using these very clinical diagnostic words for a landscape that is completely murky. We basically treat human vitality as if it were a smartphone battery.
Right, like you plug yourself in, you fill up with juice,
And then you unplug, and it just slowly drains until it dies. It's a terrible model for a living organism.
And to help us, navigate away from that flawed metaphor, we are diving into a truly groundbreaking piece of source material today. It's a book called ConscioDynamics.
The full title is ConscioDynamics, The Dynamics of Consciousness Exploring the Powers of the Mind and Self-Transformation.
Yes, written by محمد العمصي. He is a Palestinian researcher, a trainer, and the founder of Mindscape Academy. And let me just tell you right out of the gate, what he's doing in this book isn't just offering another self-help framework with 10 easy steps to feel better.
Not at all.
Huh.
He is basically ripping up the floorboards of how we understand human existence.
He really is. So, to set the stage for you, Al-Amzi points out this fascinating paradox about how modern humans operate. We are currently caught between two completely inadequate languages when it comes to talking about our internal experience.
Yeah, it's a massive blind spot.
Yeah.
So on one side, you have the strict, mathematically rigid language of physics, right? The natural sciences,
Yeah.
the scientific materialist view.
Right. So if I go to a physicist and ask them, hey, what is energy? They give me a very precise answer. Joules, watts, thermodynamics.
Exactly. Precision is the absolute hallmark of that language. Physics gives us beautiful, measurable definitions, but it is relatively silent on the subjective human experience.
Because it can't measure a feeling.
Right. Physics cannot put an equation on the feeling of being internally blocked creatively. It can't measure the sudden surge of inspiration you get when you hear a great piece of music.
Or that crushing physical weight of just existential exhaustion, like when you're just done with the day.
Exactly. To pure materialism, consciousness, your entire inner life, is basically treated as an accidental byproduct of brain chemistry. It's just, an illusion generated by meat.
Okay, so materialism gives you the machinery, but it completely ignores the music.
That's a great way to frame it. But then, feeling unsatisfied with that coldness, people swing to the complete opposite extreme. They turn to the vague, mystical language of traditional spirituality.
Right, which definitely acknowledges the music.
It does. It acknowledges the music, and it's incredibly rich in meaning. It talks about auras, cosmic fluids, invisible life forces flowing through the universe.
But, and I think this is the trap a lot of us fall into, it lacks any real structural discipline. It treats humans like these magical, esoteric sponges that just, absorb invisible juice from the cosmos if we burn enough sage.
Yeah, it lacks conceptual rigor. You can't measure it, you can't test it, or even agree on a baseline definition of what that juice actually is. So Al-Amzi argues that both of these models fail us.
The materialist model gives us precision but strips away meaning.
And the spiritual model gives us meaning but lacks precision, often devolving into magical thinking where everything is just energy and nothing means anything specific. So ConscioDynamics steps in to offer a third way.
And he calls this third way an organizational phenomenological model.
Which is quite a mouthful.
It really is. Okay, let's unpack that term immediately, because organizational phenomenological sounds like something you'd find buried in a graduate thesis. Let's break it in half.
Sure.
The organizational part implies we are looking at how things are structured rather than what substance they are made of. But phenomenological, what does it actually mean for you listening right now on your Tuesday afternoon commute?
Right. So phenomenology is a branch of philosophy that deals with the study of subjective experience. It is the study of how things appear to you from the first-person perspective.
So before we start analyzing it with a microscope or assigning a crystal to it,
Exactly, before you start applying scientific theories or mystical beliefs to the experience. So an organizational phenomenological model means we are going to look at how your internal system is structured, based entirely on how you actually experience it from the inside out.
So the mission for this deep dive is incredibly practical, actually. We want to shift your perspective today. We want you to stop asking the mystical question, what invisible substance is flowing through me?
And we want you to stop asking the purely physical question, how many calories have I burned?
Right. Instead, we want you to start asking, how coherently is my internal system organized?
Moving from energy as a thing you possess to energy as a state of organization you maintain, I mean, it is a monumental shift.
But to get there, to really understand why your Tuesday afternoon fatigue is an organizational problem, we have to start at the absolute bottom, the foundational layer of reality. We have to understand where everything comes from.
We do. We have to move from the ultimate macro level of the cosmos all the way down to the personal micro level. And that brings us to the metaphysical foundation of Al-Amsi's work, the concept of ousia.
Ousia. O-U-S-I-A. It's an ancient Greek term, right? I think Aristotle used it.
He did, yes.
But let me challenge this right out of the gate. If our goal is to help you figure out why you are so tired after sitting at a desk all day, why do we need to do a metaphysical deep dive into the origins of the universe? Isn't that taking us away from the practical stuff?
It's a totally fair challenge, but think about it this way. You cannot fix a machine if you fundamentally misunderstand what the machine is made of and the environment it operates in.
Okay, that makes sense.
Right? Like if you think a car runs on magic, you will never think to check the spark plugs.
Yeah.
If you think human vitality runs on a finite cosmic fluid, your entire strategy for living will be about hoarding that fluid.
Ah, so you have to understand the raw material of reality to understand how you are built from it.
Exactly. So Al-Amsi is using ousia to describe the undetermined origin of everything, the absolute potential before any boundaries, forms, or laws exist.
Okay, so when we talk about the origin before boundaries, are we talking about before the Big Bang, before time itself started ticking?
Well, even asking the question before time is a trap. Time itself is a measurement of change.
Right, you need something to change to measure it.
Exactly. If I have a block of ice and it melts into water, time is the measurement of that transition. But in ousia, there is no change yet because there are no things to change. It is the condition that makes existence possible.
Wait, if there are no things, no boundaries, no change, isn't that just a fancy philosophical word for nothingness, like the void?
This is a crucial distinction he makes, and it's actually where a lot of Eastern and Western philosophies clash. Ousia is absolutely not nothingness.
Because nothingness implies just a total empty vacuum.
Exactly. Nothingness is the absence of existence. It is a dead end. Ousia, the undetermined origin, is the absence of boundaries. It is pure, unmanifested potential. If you confuse the undetermined with the void, the whole theory collapses.
So it's not empty.
No, it's so infinitely full of potential that it hasn't settled into a specific shape yet.
I try to wrap my head around this. If you, me, the microphone, the listener, the galaxies, if all of this is constantly emerging from this origin, doesn't the origin eventually run out?
How do you mean?
Like draining a massive cosmic bank account. If the universe keeps creating stuff out of this potential, doesn't the tank eventually hit zero?
And right there, you've fallen back into the battery metaphor.
Oh man, have I?
You really have. Because you are thinking of resources as finite physical quantities, like coal in a furnace. Al-Amsi uses some brilliant analogies here to show why absolute potential doesn't deplete.
Okay, lay one on me.
Think of a blank canvas. When a painter creates a masterpiece on it, the canvas's potential to hold a painting didn't run out. The painting is just a specific realization of that potential.
Right. The canvas didn't lose anything by becoming the background for the Mona Lisa. It's still there.
Exactly. Or think of a prism. White light passes through a glass prism and splits into a rainbow of colors. The emergence of the color red doesn't use up a piece of the white light.
So the white light isn't a bucket of paint that runs out of red.
Right. The white light was always carrying the structural potential for red, blue, and green. The prism just revealed what was latent. The white light isn't depleted, it is just differentiated.
Let me bring in the analogy from the book that really clicked for me, because it moves away from physical objects entirely and into conceptual structures. Language.
Oh, yes, the alphabet analogy.
Yeah, think about the alphabet. The alphabet is a set of potential. When Shakespeare wrote Hamlet, he didn't use up the letters. You don't write a 900-page novel, and suddenly the letter E is running critically low in the universe.
It's generative.
Exactly. The alphabet is a generative structure. It allows for an infinite number of configurations without ever losing a single drop of its own essence.
That's the perfect way to understand Osea. The origin isn't a limited resource, it's a structure of possibility. Therefore, human vitality, your life, is not drawn from a hidden, finite cosmic tank that gets used up the more you live.
So you aren't burning through a secret stash of cosmic fluid that you have to somehow hoard and protect.
No, you are a specific configuration of endless potential. You are a sentence written using the alphabet of reality.
Okay, so if that's the raw material, what does this mean for the physical universe? Space, time, matter?
It means that the material world isn't an alien thing that was randomly dropped into a pre-existing empty box. Al-Amsi makes a profound point about time and space here.
Because we usually think of space and time as just the background reality, right?
Exactly. In our normal everyday experience, we think of time and space as the stage, and we're the actors who walk onto it. The stage was there before us, and it will be there after us. But in ConscioDynamics, time and space are not pre-existing containers. They are the result of emergence.
So they don't exist until things exist.
Precisely. Let's look at space. Space is the measurement of extension and difference. It is the distance between object A and object B.
Right, if I have an apple and an orange, space is what's between them.
But if there are no distinct objects, if there are no boundaries, like in Osea, there is no distance to measure. Therefore, space does not exist. It only emerges when forms emerge.
That is mind-bending. And time.
Time is simply the measurement of change between states, frame 1 to frame 2. If there were no states, no forms, no boundaries, there is nothing to change. So there is no time.
So time and space emerge with the structure of the universe, like shadows emerging the exact moment a light hits an object.
Exactly. You can't have the shadow without the object.
Okay, so we've got this ultimate origin, this pure, infinite alphabet of potential. But how do you and I exist within it? How do we go from an infinite alphabet to a specific, walking, talking, breathing human being listening to this deep dive?
If Osea is pure potential, what actually stabilizes the forms?
Exactly. Because we feel pretty stable.
That transition brings us to what Al-Amsi calls the field of embodiment. If Osea is the pure potential, the field of embodiment is the medium where that potential takes shape.
But again, you have to throw away your high school physics idea of empty vacuum space, right?
Right. The field of embodiment isn't a dark, empty room waiting to be filled with atoms. It is a structural potential. It's a medium of receptivity, organization, and responsiveness.
So it's the surface of the canvas where the patterns get drawn.
Exactly. And within this responsive field, things begin to emerge, but they don't emerge as solid, static blocks of matter. This is the next massive paradigm shift we need to make today. In ConscioDynamics, there are no static objects. None.
Everything is a process.
Everything. To describe the human being, Al-Amsi introduces the concept of the existential vortex. In Arabic, Andaumat al-Wujudiyya.
The existential vortex. I have to admit, when I first read that, it sounded like a 1970s sci-fi concept, like something out of Doctor Who.
It really does sound like that, but when you break down the mechanics of it, it is incredibly precise. We think we are solid blocks possessing fixed traits. We say, I am an anxious person, or I have brown hair, as if these are carved in stone. But we are dynamic processes.
Think about the pure biology of it, really. You think you are a solid thing sitting in a chair right now, but your cells are constantly dying and being replaced.
Constantly. Your stomach lining replaces itself every few days.
Your skin is entirely new every few weeks. Your breath is moving in and out, exchanging gases with the room. Your blood is circulating. Your thoughts are firing across synapses and fading away milliseconds later.
Right. There's not a single atom of you that is permanently fixed.
The book uses the analogy of a whirlpool in a river, and this completely unlocked the concept for me.
It's a fantastic analogy.
Picture a fast-moving river, and there's a whirlpool near the rocks. The water in that whirlpool changes every single millisecond. Water rushes in, spins rapidly, and rushes out downstream.
Not a single drop of water stays in the whirlpool.
Exactly. Yet the shape of the whirlpool remains perfectly stable in the river. You can point to it. You can say, look, there is the whirlpool.
Yes. You are that whirlpool.
So my identity, my meanness, isn't the water. The water is just the food I ate for breakfast, the oxygen I'm breathing right now, the temporary physical matter passing through me. My identity is the shape of the vortex.
I love how you put that. You are a pattern of organization maintaining itself in a flow of constant, unrelenting change.
And that is why the feeling of being a static, unchanging thing across time is an illusion created by organization.
Yes, what we call our identity is just the relative stability of a pattern. And human beings are incredibly complex patterns. We aren't just one simple whirlpool spinning in a river. We are a massive, interconnected network of overlapping vortices.
Let's break those layers down, because it's not just physical flesh and blood spinning around.
Right. Al-Amzi categorizes these into three primary overlapping layers.
Yes.
First, you have the physical vortex. This is your biology.
So metabolism, autonomic nervous system.
Digestion, respiration. This is the baseline rhythm of your physical form gathering and expelling matter.
The hardware.
The hardware. But overlapping that and perfectly integrated with it is the psychological vortex. This is your emotional landscape.
Your moods, your chemical reactions to stimuli.
Your baseline temperament, your desires, and your aversions. That all spins together.
And then the third layer.
The cognitive vortex. Your thoughts, your beliefs, your conscious attention, your logic, the meaning you actively assign to the world around you.
So physical, psychological, cognitive. Three whirlpools spinning inside each other. And when they're all spinning in sync.
When they sync up, when the physical, emotional, and cognitive layers are harmonized and spinning around the same central axis, you feel what we commonly call alive. You feel vital. You feel present. You feel like you have infinite energy.
Which brings us right to the absolute destruction of the battery metaphor. Understanding ourselves as these overlapping, swirling, self-organizing vortices completely shatters how we normally talk about our daily energy levels.
It has to. Because if you truly understand that you are a dynamic vortex, a pattern of organization, you realize it is biologically and philosophically impossible for you to be a battery.
But we say it all the time. I say it, I need to recharge my batteries this weekend. I'm running on empty. My boss is an energy vampire. She just drained my battery. We literally treat our vitality as a liquid volume.
Al-Amzi specifically critiques this. And when you look at the mechanics of a battery, you see why it's such a toxic metaphor for human life. What is a battery?
It's a passive container.
Exactly. It holds a substance, it sits there doing absolutely nothing, and eventually it drains over time due to entropy, even if you don't use it.
And it requires an external source to fill back up.
Right. You have to plug it into an alien source of power. And its capacity is purely quantitative. You have 100%, then 80, then 10.
Humans just do not work like that.
Not at all. Humans are self-organizing open systems. Let me give you an example that proves volume of energy is irrelevant compared to organization.
Let's hear it.
You can go to the most beautiful, pristine, serene forest in the world. The kind of place spiritual retreats charge thousands of dollars for because it's quote-unquote a high-energy location. You can sit under an ancient tree, breathing the purest oxygen. The environmental fuel is perfect.
Sounds amazing.
But if your mind is racing with anxiety about a mortgage payment and your stomach is in knots because of a bitter argument you had with your partner that morning, you will feel completely, utterly exhausted.
Oh, yeah. You will feel totally drained.
The external energy of the forest does absolutely nothing for you.
Because my internal vortices are grinding against each other.
Exactly. Your cognitive vortex is in the future, worrying about money. Your psychological vortex is in the past, replaying the argument. And your physical vortex is just sitting under a tree. They are spinning in three different directions. The system is tearing itself apart.
Wow.
Conversely, you can be sitting perfectly still in a sterile, silent, featureless room. No external stimulation, no fresh air, no beautiful scenery. But if your mind is crystal clear, your breathing is rhythmic, and you are focused entirely on a single deeply meaningful thought or task. You can feel an incredible surge of power and invigoration.
You feel unstoppable. So it's not about the quantity of the external fuel, it's about the quality of the internal engine.
Yes. Al-Amzi forces us to shift the definition of vitality. Vitality is not a surplus of hidden mystical fuel. Vitality is coherence.
Coherence. I want to really drill down into that word because it sounds nice, but what does it mean mechanically, like in my body?
Coherence means low internal resistance and high harmony between your physical, psychological, and cognitive layers. When the components of your system work together instead of against each other, you don't actually need more energy to function beautifully.
You just waste less.
Exactly. You are simply wasting less of the baseline life force that is already passing through your vortex.
Okay, here's an analogy from the text that really cemented this for me, and it involves physics again. The laser beam.
Ah, yes. I love this one.
Let's look at a standard 60-watt incandescent light bulb. You screw it into a lamp, You turn it on, and it fills a whole room with light. But that light is scattered.
Right, the photons are bouncing in a billion different directions.
Hitting the walls, the ceiling, the floor. They are highly disorganized. You can put your hand right next to that bulb, and all you feel is a little bit of warmth. It's expansive, but weak.
Right.
But if you take that exact same amount of power, just 60 watts, and you organize it into a laser, the physics completely change. Suddenly, those photons aren't scattering. They are marching in lockstep.
The crests and troughs of their waves perfectly align.
Right. They are highly organized and synchronized. That 60-watt laser can now cut through steel. The laser isn't necessarily more powerful at its source than the scattered light bulb. It doesn't have more juice.
Its light is just highly coherent.
Exactly. It has penetration and focus because there is zero wasted dispersion.
That is a brilliant, precise way to visualize human coherence.
Yeah.
An exhausted person isn't necessarily lacking power. Their power is just scattered. It's behaving like the 60-watt light bulb.
Just leaking potential everywhere.
Right. They're leaking structural potential in 100 different directions. They are leaking it through chronic anxiety, through poor physical posture, through shallow chest breathing, and through conflicting cognitive desires.
And a coherent person.
A coherent person has laser-like focus. Their physical posture supports their deep diaphragmatic breathing, which supports their emotional calm, which supports their cognitive sharpness. Every layer is amplifying the others.
So the direct opposite of coherence is what Al'Amsi calls organizational noise. This is internal conflict.
Which is rampant today.
Now, I want to spend some time here because this answers a question that I think bothers almost every adult in the modern world. Why do you feel totally, completely drained after sitting at a desk for 8 hours doing absolutely nothing physical?
Such a common experience.
Right. You haven't moved. You haven't burned calories like a marathon runner. You've just stared at a screen. But you get to your car at 5 p.m. and you feel like you've been hit by a truck.
It's a profound question, and if you cling to the battery metaphor, it makes no sense. If energy is just physical fuel, sitting still shouldn't tire you out. You should be fully charged.
I should be ready to run a marathon.
But the organizational model answers it perfectly. You aren't a battery. You are a dynamic vortex. When you are sitting at that desk, your physical vortex wants to move. Human biology is built for motion, for walking, for varied postures. But you are forcing it into rigid, unnatural stillness for 8 hours.
So that's friction point number one.
Exactly. Then, look at your psychological vortex. You might be dealing with the subtle underlying fear of missing a deadline, or the suppressed frustration of dealing with a micromanaging boss. You can't yell at your boss, so you suppress the emotional urge.
Friction point number two.
Right. Then, your cognitive vortex is trying to force your conscious attention onto a spreadsheet that you find incredibly boring.
So my mind wants to wander, my emotions want to explode, and my body wants to run. But I'm forcing all three to sit perfectly still and look at a glowing rectangle. They're literally at war.
They're actively fighting each other. Your mind is expending massive cognitive effort to suppress your body's urge to move. Your willpower is working overtime to suppress your emotional frustration. This creates massive internal friction.
It's like driving a car with the parking brake fully engaged.
While slamming on the gas pedal, the engine is roaring, working twice as hard, generating immense heat just to move an inch forward. You aren't out of energy. Your vortex is consuming itself through sheer internal resistance.
Wow. The exhaustion you feel at 5 p.m. is literally the heat generated by your own internal friction. That changes everything.
It really reframes the whole experience, doesn't it?
Yeah. If I'm tired, my first thought shouldn't be, I need a triple espresso or I need to hold a healing crystal. My first thought should be, what parts of my system are currently grinding against each other?
Exactly. You don't need to add more fuel to an engine that is tearing itself apart.
Yeah.
You need to reduce the organizational noise. You need to take the parking brake off.
Okay, let me play devil's advocate here for a second.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the physical sensation of energy. Because if energy is just organizational coherence, how do we explain the very real, tangible physical sensations people have of blocked energy?
What do you mean by that?
Like, people aren't making this up. They go to an acupuncturist or a Reiki healer or they meditate and they genuinely feel a heavy, dense knot in their chest. They feel stuck. And then during a session, they suddenly feel a massive physical release, like a dam breaking.
Yeah, rush of heat or tingling.
Right. If we aren't talking about a clogged pipe of mystical cosmic fluid, what the heck is actually happening in their bodies?
That is the genius of the ConscioDynamics framework. Al-Amsi doesn't sit back and arrogantly deny the human experience. He validates it entirely.
So the feeling isn't fake.
No, the subjective feeling of being blocked is 100% real. The feeling of release is 100% real. But the interpretation of that feeling as a clogged pipe of mystical fluid is biologically flawed.
So what is an energy blockage redefined? If it's not a clogged pipe, what is it?
A blockage is a failure of the internal system to return to a baseline of flow after being triggered.
Let's break that down into plain biology. What does that mean for my nervous system?
Okay, imagine you experience a sudden threat. Say a car swerves into your lane on the highway.
Terrifying.
Right. Your body instantly, beautifully reorganizes for defense. Your sympathetic nervous system kicks in. Your shoulders tense to protect your neck. Your breath becomes shallow and rapid to oxygenate your muscles.
My heart rate spikes.
Your digestion instantly shuts down so blood can flow to your limbs. This is a highly organized, brilliant survival response.
The classic fight or flight response. My vortex has instantly reorganized for survival.
Exactly. The problem arises when the threat passes, the car swerves away, you're safe, but your internal system fails to stand down.
It gets stuck.
Yes, a blockage is a rigid, outdated defensive pattern. It's a physiological and emotional response that has become permanently stuck in the on position.
But why does it get stuck? Like, shouldn't the body know the car is gone?
Usually it's due to chronic stress or unintegrated trauma. The brain starts perceiving the entire environment as a threat. So your nervous system, your fascia, which is the connective tissue wrapping your muscles, your muscular tension, your emotional baseline, they freeze in that contracted defensive posture.
And I assume because it happens slowly over time, you stop noticing it.
Exactly. It becomes your new normal.
So when I feel a blockage in my chest, it's not a mystical fluid that can't get through a spiritual vein. It's my literal tissues, my intercostal muscles, and my nerves holding a microscopic posture of defense long after the war is over.
Precisely. You feel heavy or stuck because maintaining a defensive posture requires continuous, massive effort from your system. It is an active, exhausting contraction that you've just become numb to consciously.
Wow.
So when a somatic practitioner or deep medication helps you clear a block, they aren't plunging a spiritual toilet. They are helping your nervous system realize, finally, that it is safe enough to let go of that chronic contraction.
And that's what that rush feels like.
Yes. The massive release you feel, the warmth, the tingling, the sudden rush of emotion is the literal biological sensation of the system dropping the armor and returning to coherence. Blood flow returns. Vagal tone restores. The muscles unclench.
This brings us right to the doorstep of one of the most famous and probably the most debated concepts in spirituality, chakras.
Oh yes, this is a huge topic.
Thousands of years of ancient traditions map out these 7 spinning wheels of light along the spine. Are they completely wrong? Because people swear by them, they meditate on them, they feel them spinning, they feel them opening and closing.
Again, Al-Amsi offers this beautiful, nuanced third-wave perspective that honors the ancient wisdom while updating the mechanics. Are the ancient yogic traditions wrong? No, not about the experiential reality.
So what they felt was real.
The experience they mapped is incredibly accurate, but the interpretation is a product of its historical time. When you don't have functional MRI machines or an understanding of the autonomic nervous system, you describe what you feel using the metaphors available to you, like spinning wheels of energy or lotuses.
Okay, so if they aren't magical wheels pulling cosmic energy from the stars, what are they? Why do we feel them so intensely in specific universal spots? Like everyone feels it in the chest, the throat, the pit of the stomach.
Because those specific locations in the body are what Al-Amsi calls organizational nodes. They are high-density neuro-emotional intersections.
Intersections of the vortex.
Yes. Let's look at the literal medical anatomy. The places ancient traditions identified as major chakras correspond almost perfectly to major nerve plexuses, major endocrine glands, and areas of massive vascular activity in the human body.
Okay, let's go through some examples. Take the heart chakra, right in the center of the chest.
What is biologically there? The cardiac plexus, which is a massive network of sympathetic and parasympathetic nerves. The thymus gland. The heart itself, which has its own complex intrinsic nervous system.
What about the solar plexus chakra, the stomach area? People always talk about feeling gut instincts there.
Right, the enteric nervous system. We literally call it the second brain. It's a vast network of millions of neurons lining your gut, heavily communicating with the brain via the vagus nerve.
And the throat chakra.
The pharyngeal plexus, the thyroid gland, these aren't random spots. These are the central hubs in the human network where the physical, muscular, vascular, hormonal, and emotional systems heavily overlap and communicate.
It's like the Times Square or the Grand Central Station of your nervous system.
That's a perfect analogy. It's a major transit hub. And because so many different systems intersect there, these nodes are incredibly sensitive to organizational noise. When you have severe emotional stress, where do you physically feel it? You don't usually feel an emotional heartbreak in your left elbow.
No, I feel a heavy knot in my stomach or a crushing tightness in my chest or a lump in my throat that makes it hard to swallow.
Because those are the high-density nodes where the psychological vortex crashes directly into the physical vortex.
Yeah.
The emotional tension manifests physically at the major intersections.
So when ancient yogis sat in deep meditation and felt intense pressure or heat or vibration in these specific spots, they were accurately sensing the hubs of their own neuro-emotional organization. They felt the traffic jams.
They absolutely did.
So if I'm not opening a mystical portal, what is actually happening when I go to a chakra alignment session or when I meditate and focus my attention on my heart center? Because the reality is, it does work for people. People feel profoundly better, calmer, more energized.
It works beautifully, and the organizational model explains why it works mechanically. Let's go back to your Times Square analogy. If you have a massive citywide traffic jam, how do you clear it?
Well, you wouldn't send a helicopter to fix a tiny one-way side street in the suburbs.
Exactly. You send the traffic cops directly to the major intersections, the hubs. If you clear Times Square, the flow of traffic naturally improves miles away.
You intervene at the point of maximum leverage.
Because modifying a central intersection redistributes activity across the entire human network. When you focus your conscious attention, your slow breathing, and your intention on your chest, your heart chakra, you are intentionally stimulating the vagus nerve.
You're physically calming the body down.
You are down-regulating the autonomic nervous system at a massive hub. As that cardiac node relaxes, as the muscles unclench and the heart rate variability improves, that coherence ripples out.
Sending signals everywhere else.
Right, it sends safety signals back up to your brain, lowering anxiety. It sends signals down to your gut, improving digestion. You feel entirely revitalized, not because a wizard opened a portal, but because you successfully intervened at a high leverage point in your own self-organizing biology.
That is incredibly empowering. It takes the esoteric magic out of it, but in a way that makes it infinitely more accessible. I don't need to find a guru to unlock my cosmic portals. I need to use my own mind to organize my biological nodes.
Exactly. You have the tools already.
Which brings us perfectly to the next major piece of the puzzle. If energy is coherence, and blocks are stuck defensive patterns, and chakras are biological hubs, how do we actively fix them? We have to use the ultimate organizing tool in the human system.
And that tool is consciousness itself. But just like we redefined energy, we have to deeply redefine consciousness.
How so?
Well, in the modern West, we often think of consciousness as a passive mirror. We think of it as just the screen in the movie theater of your mind. It sits outside the body, behind your eyes, just passively watching the movie of your life happen.
Yeah, it's just a witness. It observes, but it doesn't touch anything.
Right. But in ConscioDynamics, consciousness is not a passive mirror. It is an active participant. It is a force. It is the mechanism that redistributes resources and priorities within the vortex. Where you place your conscious attention literally, physically changes the biological and emotional organization of your system.
Let's really dig into this mechanism. Al-Amamsi talks about cognitive movement, which is the ability of attention to shift its location. For you listening right now, what does this actually mean in practice? It means addressing the danger of living entirely in your head.
Which almost all of us do.
Yeah. Most of us in the modern knowledge work economy walk around as if we were just a brain piloting a bone mech. Our consciousness is trapped entirely in the cognitive vortex, worrying about the future, analyzing data, replaying arguments from the past.
And when consciousness is trapped in the penthouse suite of the brain, the rest of the building, the body, is left unmonitored.
And what happens when the body is left unmonitored?
When the physical body is left unmonitored by conscious attention, it falls back on its default programming. And in modern society, the default programming is usually low-grade stress. It falls into those rigid defensive patterns we talked about earlier.
Like the hunched shoulders over the keyboard.
Exactly. The shoulders creep up toward the ears, the jaw clenches, the breathing becomes shallow and restricted to the upper chest. The system loses coherence because the central organizer, your conscious attention, has abandoned the lower floors.
So the solution Al-Amsi presents is a practice called interoception, internal sensing. It's the intentional act of moving your conscious attention down out of the head and into the physical volume of the body.
Feeling your heartbeat.
Right. Noticing the temperature of your skin, feeling the mechanical expansion of your ribs, feeling the weight of your feet pressing into the floor. But let me push back on this a little bit because I know people who try this and really struggle.
What's the main issue they face?
If I focus too much on my internal physical sensations, won't I just become hypersensitive? Like, won't I just induce a panic attack by obsessing over every little irregular heartbeat or every weird twinge in my gut? Isn't ignorance bliss when it comes to internal organs?
That is a very common and very valid fear, and Al-Amzi actually addresses it. The goal of interoception is not to create hypersensitivity or hypochondria. It's not about turning an anxious analytical spotlight onto your organs to scan them for disease.
Well, because that's still just the brain being neurotic.
Exactly. That is still just the cognitive vortex trying to control the body. The goal of interoception is to build a clear, welcoming internal map.
An internal map. Explain how that differs from hypochondria.
When you live entirely in your head, your body becomes an alien landscape. It's an unknown territory. So when something happens down there, a sudden flutter of anxiety in the chest, a tightening of the gut before a meeting, it feels like an ambush. You panic because you don't know the territory.
Ah, your brain interprets any strong internal signal as a catastrophic threat because it's completely unfamiliar with normal operations.
Exactly. Interoception is about exploring the territory slowly, deliberately, when you are safe, so that you map the terrain. You learn what your baseline feels like.
So you're shining a gentle flashlight into the dark basement of your body so that when the floorboards creak, you know it's just the house settling, not a monster.
That is a beautiful way to put it. And mechanically, this does something profound in the brain. The area of the brain responsible for interoception is the insula. By practicing this internal feeling, you are literally thickening the neural pathways in the insula, giving you better emotional regulation.
That's incredible.
More importantly, Al-Amzi talks about feeling the body not as a collection of parts, not just my knee hurts or my stomach is gurgling, but feeling the entire volume of your body at once as a single unified block of presence, finding what he calls the internal wave.
Like the subtle underlying pulse of your whole system breathing and circulating blood together, the hum of the engine.
Yes, and here's where consciousness actively creates coherence. Think about this. The physical body exists entirely in the present tense.
Meaning it can't be in the past or future.
Right. Your body cannot breathe yesterday's air, and it cannot pump tomorrow's blood. It is locked in the now. The mind, however, is a time traveler. It flies into the future to worry and into the past to regret. When you intentionally drop your consciousness into the physical sensation of the body, when you feel the gravity pulling down on your bones, you are using the heavy, grounded mass of the physical vortex to anchor the chaotic flying kite of the cognitive vortex.
Wow.
By moving your cognition into the body, you force the mind to synchronize with the present moment. That synchronization is coherence.
That is phenomenal. You are literally dragging your mind into the present by attaching it to the physical mass of your body.
Okay, if we can achieve this, if we can use our consciousness to organize our biological nodes, clear our defensive muscular blockages, and synchronize our physical, emotional, and cognitive vortices, what happens next?
Now we get to the really fun stuff. Yeah, because the book doesn't just stop at feeling calm and focused. It gets into some pretty wild frontier territory. If this internal synchronization can heal a block, what happens when you push it to the absolute limit? What happens when the whole system syncs up perfectly?
This is where Al-Amzi's work is truly fascinating, because he takes phenomena that have historically been relegated to the paranormal, or pure mysticism, and explains them through the lens of organizational cybernetics and neurology.
Let's take the vibrational state. Anyone who has done deep advanced meditation or spent time in a sensory deprivation tank has probably experienced this.
It's very common in those practices, yeah.
It's an intense, overwhelming feeling of physical buzzing. It feels like a wave of electricity rushing through the nervous system. I've heard people describe this, and they usually say they are tuning in to a higher cosmic frequency, like they've suddenly become a radio antenna picking up signals from deep space.
Right, the antenna metaphor. But ConscioDynamics argues that you aren't tuning in to an external cosmic frequency at all. What you are feeling is a profound, systemic, neurocognitive synchronization.
Break down the biology of that. What is actually vibrating?
Think about your baseline state right now. Your nervous system is firing in a million fragmented asynchronous patterns.
Doing a million jobs at once.
Exactly.
Blech.
Part of your brain is processing my voice. Heart is regulating your body temperature. Your visual cortex is processing the room. Your gut is digesting. It's a cacophony of different rhythms.
Holy noise.
But in deep, highly coherent meditation, you strip away the external sensory noise. You align the breath to a perfect rhythm. You quiet the cognitive chatter. As the system reaches peak coherence, the nervous system shifts from fragmented noise to a highly cohesive, unified rhythm.
So they all start marching together.
Yes. Billions of neurons start firing in a synchronized macroscopic wave. Subjectively, from the inside, that massive internal synchronization feels like a physical vibration or a high-voltage electrical current.
That makes perfect mechanical sense. It's not magic juice from space zapping me. It's the feeling of my own biological engine suddenly humming in perfect, frictionless unison.
Exactly.
The vibration is just the subjective feeling of ultimate internal order.
The vibration is the subjective experience of absolute internal coherence.
Let me push you on something even wilder then. Conscious projection, or out-of-body experiences, OBEs. Al-Amzi is an expert on this. He wrote the book Walker Between Worlds, which is a deep dive into this exact phenomenon. So he's clearly not dismissing OBEs as fake.
He takes them incredibly seriously.
Yeah.
He has spent years studying them phenomenologically and training people to achieve them.
Then he removes the mystical dogma, because the traditional esoteric view of an OBE is that you have a literal, ghostly astral body made of ethereal substance that physically unzips from your meat shell and floats around the ceiling looking down at you.
The literal ghost in the machine escaping.
Yes. ConscioDynamics views an OBE entirely differently, right?
It does. It views it as an advanced cognitive skill. It's the extreme flexibility of consciousness to rebuild the spatial representation of the self.
Wait, rebuild the spatial representation? That sounds like a virtual reality term.
It's very similar to how VR works in the brain. Think about it this way. Right now, as you sit there, your brain is taking in massive amounts of sensory data. Sight from the eyes, sound from the ears, proprioception from the muscles, gravity from the inner ear.
Processing everything all at once.
Right. The brain synthesizes all that data and constructs a 3D model of reality in real time. And crucially, it places the feeling of you, the observer, right behind your eyes, inside the skull.
Yeah, that's undeniably where I feel located. I feel like I'm a little pilot inside my head looking out the windows of my eyes.
But that location is a construct. It is a highly useful, evolutionarily necessary organizational trick your brain performs to help you interact with the physical world and avoid walking into walls.
Okay.
What Al-Amzi argues is that the self isn't permanently anchored to those physical coordinates. The self is a flexible organizational pattern.
So what happens during an OBE?
In deep, profound states of coherence, when sensory input from the physical body is completely cut off, like in sleep paralysis or deep trance states, the conscious mind can uncouple from that biological anchor point.
Whoa.
It can reconstruct the spatial representation of me at a different coordinate within its internally generated model of reality.
So it's literally like moving the camera perspective in a 3D video game. The camera isn't the physical console sitting under the TV. The camera is just a point of perspective within the rendered software engine. My brain is the console, but my consciousness is the camera.
That is exactly it. An OBE proves that the feeling of I is not permanently glued to the physical tissue. It demonstrates the sheer, terrifying power of consciousness to organize and reorganize experience.
But I have to ask the hard question here. I understand the mechanism of shifting the camera in the brain's rendering engine. But what about the objective data problem?
The veridical perception issue.
Yes. There are thousands of reports of people having OBEs during surgery, for example, and they report floating above the operating table, and they can accurately describe tools or conversations that they couldn't possibly have seen or heard from their physical location. Does Al-Amzi address whether the consciousness is actually gathering objective data from a distance? Or is he saying it's a purely subjective internal hallucination?
It's the bleeding edge of the field, really. From the organizational perspective, if the field of embodiment is a continuous, interconnected medium, and remember, space is just the emergence of difference, then highly coherent consciousness may not be bound by local sensory organs.
Say that again.
If your internal vortex achieves high enough coherence, its boundary with the external field becomes permeable. It may be able to interact with the organizational patterns of the room directly without needing photons hitting a biological retina.
Wow, that is profound.
Whether that is parapsychology or just undiscovered physics is up for debate, but the mechanism of the experience starts with the internal organizational shift of spatial representation.
That idea of boundaries becoming permeable leads perfectly into the last advanced phenomenon. Synchronicity. We've all experienced this. Those moments when random, chaotic events in the external world seem deeply, impossibly connected to our internal thoughts.
Carl Jung's favorite topic.
Right. You think of an old friend you haven't spoken to in 10 years, and your phone rings 5 seconds later and it's them. You are struggling with a deep life question, and a random billboard perfectly answers it. People constantly say, the universe is sending me a sign.
Al-Amzi says, instead of looking at the universe, look at the observer. Synchronicity isn't necessarily the universe aggressively rearranging physical objects and manipulating people just to send you a customized text message.
That's a very egocentric view of reality.
It really is. Instead, synchronicity reveals how consciousness actively builds meaning based on high sensitivity and focus.
Is this just the red car phenomenon? The Bader-Meinhof phenomenon? You buy a red car and suddenly your brain notices red cars everywhere, even though the number of red cars didn't change.
It involves that mechanism, the reticular activating system in the brain filtering data, but on a much deeper existential level. When your internal vortex is highly coherent, your sensitivity to the environment skyrockets. Your consciousness acts as a profound organizational lens on reality.
Because reality is infinitely complex.
Right. A noisy, fragmented mind filters out almost everything just to survive the day. But a highly coherent mind highlights subtle patterns, timings, and variables that match its internal state.
So you aren't magically forcing your friend to call you.
No. But your heightened coherence aligns your attention to notice patterns, or even subtle, non-local organizational shifts in the field that a noisy mind would completely dismiss as a random coincidence. Synchronicity is the experience of the boundary between the internal vortex and the external field becoming highly synchronized.
The inside and the outside are dancing at the same rhythm. It all comes back to organization, which leads us perfectly into our final piece of the puzzle. We've explored the absolute metaphysical origins of the universe. We've talked about the physics of laser beams. We've deconstructed chakras, and we've analyzed out-of-body states.
We covered a lot of ground.
We did. But how does this model change what you, the listener, do when you wake up tomorrow morning?
This is where the rubber meets the road.
Yeah.
Because understanding all this theory, all this metaphysics, is totally useless if it doesn't change how you actually live your life. The biggest practical takeaway from ConscioDynamics is a fundamental shift in daily strategy, managing conditions, not catching energy.
Right. You can't catch energy like catching a cold or catching a butterfly with a net.
No.
You cannot hoard it. You can only manage the conditions for organizational coherence.
Exactly. If you wake up exhausted, your first thought shouldn't be to find an external source to plug into, whether that's an energy drink or a motivational YouTube video. You need to look at the biological and environmental foundations of your coherence.
Are you providing the raw materials for your vortex to organize itself?
Exactly. Let's list those foundations out because they're deceptively simple, but we completely ignore them in modern life.
Okay, lay them out.
They are non-negotiable laws of biology. Adequate sleep, rhythmic movement, proper nutrition, and crucially, honoring the cycle of stress and recovery.
Let's dive deep into that stress and recovery cycle, because the modern myth of nonstop grinding productivity is basically the dominant religion of our time. Rise and grind, I'll sleep when I'm dead, all that.
And that mentality is absolutely deadly to coherence. We treat ourselves like linear machines, like a conveyor belt that can just run 16 hours a day as long as it has electricity.
But biological systems do not operate in straight lines.
They work in waves, action and rest, sympathetic and parasympathetic, inhalation and exhalation. Ultradian rhythms dictate that our brains can only maintain peak focus for about 90 minutes before needing a period of rest.
And if you push a complex system constantly without honoring the trough of the wave,
the system doesn't get stronger. You don't build mental endurance. You just accumulate fatal organizational noise.
Friction, heat, exhaustion.
Yes. If you don't sleep, your glymphatic system literally cannot wash the metabolic waste out of your brain. Your cognitive vortex starts to physically fray. You lose focus.
Your emotional vortex loses its regulatory brakes, and you snap at your kids or your coworkers.
Exactly. Without the recovery phase, your system is literally breaking down its own intricate organization just to keep the physical body moving. Taking a break, going for a walk, staring blankly out a window for 10 minutes. These aren't signs of weakness or laziness. They are mandatory biologically necessary maintenance for the vortex.
And it's not just internal biological maintenance. We have to talk about environmental impact, because you are an open system.
Yes, the field of embodiment isn't locked inside your skin. It's all around you. Your environment actively, continuously shapes your internal vortex.
This is a vital point for practical living. A messy bedroom, a chaotic office desk, a smartphone buzzing with notifications every 3 minutes, toxic relationships where you are constantly walking on eggshells. We tend to think of these things as purely external to us. Oh, my desk is messy, but I'm fine internally.
No. You are constantly, inextricably interacting with that environment. Your visual cortex is expending massive cognitive resources to process the visual clutter of the messy room.
Your emotional vortex is constantly managing the subtle baseline stress of that toxic coworker.
They are actively draining your coherence through non-productive friction.
You are leaking organizational potential just to maintain baseline functioning in a hostile, chaotic environment.
Exactly. So cleaning your room, setting strict boundaries with negative people, putting your phone on airplane mode, this isn't just fluffy self-care. It is advanced energy management.
You are smoothing out the field of embodiment so your internal vortex can spin with less resistance. You are removing the rocks from the river so the whirlpool can stabilize.
Beautifully said. This all builds to the ultimate goal of the book, the destination Al-Amzi is trying to guide us toward. He calls it conscious maturity, or organizational wisdom.
I really love that term, organizational wisdom,
Yeah.
because it sets a realistic, profound goal. The goal of this work isn't to become a glowing, floating superhero.
No, it's not about being invincible, never feeling tired again, or constantly buzzing with toxic positivity and high energy. That is an adolescent fantasy of spirituality.
Right. The idea that if I just meditate enough or align my chakras perfectly, I'll never need to sleep, I'll never get angry, and I'll just be a beacon of pure light.
Conscious maturity is recognizing that you are a dynamic, fragile system living in a dynamic, often chaotic world. Organizational wisdom is knowing when to push hard and knowing when to rest deeply.
It's knowing when to engage in a conflict because it's necessary for growth, and when to let an argument go because it's just generating useless internal noise.
True power isn't a loud, rigid, unstoppable force. True power is a quiet, highly flexible balance. It's the ability to reorganize yourself rapidly after a setback or a trauma. It's the wisdom to navigate the rapids of the river without drowning in the whirlpool.
It's tuning the instrument. Okay, we have covered an immense amount of ground today. Let's do a quick recap of this incredible journey.
We started by discarding the broken, toxic battery metaphor, this pervasive idea that we are empty containers needing to be filled with magical cosmic juice.
Instead, through the meticulous lens of ConscioDynamics, we now understand ourselves as dynamic, self-organizing existential vortices. Energy or vitality isn't a physical substance you own. It's simply the beautiful music played by a well-tuned instrument. It is coherence.
We moved from asking what is flowing through me to asking the much more powerful question, how well am I organized?
We saw how physical blockages are just stark defensive patterns in the nervous system, how chakras are crucial biological intersections, and how our own consciousness, through interoception, is the active tool that can smooth out the friction and bring us back into the present moment.
It really is a complete paradigm shift.
It is. And as we wrap up, I want to leave you, the listener, with a final provocative thought, something we haven't touched on directly, but which emerges from the deepest implications of Al-Amzi's work.
Let's hear it.
If we are not closed batteries, if we are open, self-organizing systems interacting with a shared field of embodiment, then our coherence isn't just a private matter. We are constantly, invisibly organizing each other.
Oh, that's profound.
When you walk into a room, the state of your vortex, your coherence or your noise, ripples out and interacts with the vortices of everyone around you. So think about the sheer exhaustion of modern society, the burnout epidemic. What if the reason we are all so tired isn't just an individual failure to get enough sleep?
What if our collective exhaustion is the symptom of a shared systemic organizational collapse?
Exactly. What if your personal journey to find internal coherence is actually the most profound act of public service you can perform? Because by tuning your own instrument, you are literally changing the frequency of the room for the rest of us.
That is the ultimate test of conscious maturity, realizing that by organizing yourself, you help organize the world.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into ConscioDynamics. We hope this gives you a completely new, empowering way to look at your life, your tiredness, and your infinite potential. Take this organizational wisdom, take the parking brake off, tune your instrument, and we'll see you next time.